All right, we're recording. And
Hello, everyone. You're listening to Celluloid Chatroom. I'm Madeleine.
I'm Sahan.
Uh, Please make sure to like and subscribe. Today, we're going to be talking about a 2023 documentary called Razing Liberty Square, directed by Katya Essen.
All right, awesome. That was a great intro.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so, what do you think?
I really thought this was a good I thought this was a well-made, well thought out, well executed documentary. I really liked it. I could it seems like something that I would have watched for school and then it would stick with me beyond leaving class. That's kind of how I felt watching it. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. How about you?
Okay, so I thought it was good, but I did feel like something was missing. And it did take me a little while to, like, really, pinpoint it. I mean, I just thought that, like, I don't know what any of these people do for, like, a living, right? And I just felt like there was something missing. Like, it's all about economic development. Did you feel the same way at all?
Um, I don't know. I didn't think about that actually. I guess while I was watching, it's they're following the lives of the people in Liberty Square, obviously, but it's mostly about their lives in relation to Liberty Square, right? So I didn't feel like that was missing too much because I'm not sure how much it would have provided. It's always interesting when you're watching a documentary to think about what they do include and then also what they don't include. And I think that there's some things that the film didn't include that were more kind of interesting to me than maybe kind of just what everyone did as a job. But why do you think? What did you
Um,
feel like was lacking from not knowing what they did?
oh, it's just that, a lot of it is based around, the poverty that people face. And I'm really sorry. I feel like I put you on the spot there. I was
No,
like,
it's
no, you're
okay.
wrong. So, about the poverty that they face, the violence, and the violence is, like, really pervasive, apparently, in
Hmm.
their in those neighborhoods. And it's just kind of, it would have been interesting to know what the community felt should have been done instead. Aaron, like, let's say one of the main characters, um, Aaron, right?
Yeah.
His whole motivation is to try and, improve the economic situation in
Hmm.
the area. And so as a result, I felt like there were some, questions about the community that were important, and needed to be sort of addressed as just sort of the foundation of his perspective.
I guess so, but at the same time, he talked a lot about how he thinks that the generational kind of poverty that had been happening in Liberty City was unmotivating. There was no model for the people growing up in Liberty Square of economic success um of bettering their lives. Since there's just so much systemic poverty, I think he was kind of saying that how are people supposed to see a way out of it if it's not modeled in their community, which I don't necessarily think that that's I'm not sure if that's actually the correct approach, but I think that that's where he was. I mean, I don't know what the correct approach is, but I think that's what he was thinking when he went into it.
No, no, fair enough. Like, I think that, what I found particularly interesting was that, it's like, how do these people go wrong, right? Because it's a story of history repeating itself, right?
Hmm.
And, you know, he doesn't appear cynical, and that's, I think, one of the movie's, great strengths is it finds, somebody who, I mean, in a worse film would have been just sort of an antagonist, right? But he was anything but. And yet, like, there was you know something that was missing. I mean, they spoke about economic development, but not really about the problems that the community itself faced. right? And that's where he goes wrong. And so, in order to to actually see what the community was like, I did feel like I needed to know more about their economic conditions.
I mean, maybe the conditions I think were shown. I think it's like their like day to day kind of what their job is maybe is more missing. And like, yeah, I do get that, but I think that like again, they have to there has to be some sort of scope to the documentary where they have to choose, what they do and don't include. But this kind of brings me to something else that I thought was interesting. Like I just said, it's interesting what documentaries choose to show, and it's interesting what they choose to omit. Is that um, something that I really did appreciate about the film is that they they talked about like the neighborhood being violent, and they talked about how that was like an issue, but they didn't show the violence. And I think that in a lot of documentaries, or like in a lot of situations, I think there's situations where it's necessary, and I think there's lots of situations where it's tempting as like a documentary is like a visual media that's like, it's part informational, but it also, gets its appeal and like becomes impactful as like an emotional kind of like as a form of entertainment and as something for people to like emotionally connect to. And so like to kind of omit the violence, I thought was a good idea and a strength, but like it's kind of still like kind of a looming like theme. Like it's alluded to a lot. Like we know that that's one of the motivating factors in the people wanting to leave, and we also know that that's kind of an excuse that is used by the government to say, well, that's why we're giving you guys these vouchers, is that you want to clear the area because of the violence. But I do appreciate that they didn't try to make these people in these communities seem like victims of the violence in their communities, because I think that would have distracted from like how they were victims of like systemic like injustice and systemic like the gentrification essentially,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how they didn't, like the movie like knew what it was about, and it did a good job, or the documentary knew what it was about, it did a good job of kind of keeping us on that track. But then another omission that I thought was interesting, and that like I just have a lot of questions about now, is um so they talked to the mayor in the beginning of the documentary, the mayor of Miami, and they talked to the owner of the what's the real estate company called? I have that written down somewhere here. Of Related Urban. They have
Okay.
the
You're
head of
much
him,
better
and
than
they
me.
talk in the beginning, but then we don't hear about them further on in the documentary, and it makes me curious, was that because the filmmakers didn't reach out to them again? Was that because the filmmakers did talk to them more and just didn't think it was worth going in the documentary? Or is that because these figures just became less and less willing to talk to the documentary filmmakers as the film goes on? Because we see how in the beginning, they've got like the CEO up there, but then kind of towards the end, it really does seem like Aaron is the only one liaising with the community. Like he is, he says it at the end. He says, "I realized I was a political hire," and he becomes kind of the company's like, they put him facing the community, and then he kind of becomes the punching bag. So that, and then the fact that he's from the community is now that they have someone from their community who can be the enemy, then the corporations are kind of absolved. Like that, it keeps the animosity in the community almost. Like they're trying to keep it away from the corporation, which obviously there's still the animosity towards the corporation, but it's you do feel for how Aaron just like he becomes kind of this political pawn, and he can see how what started off as like he was trying to kind of work within the system to make change for his community, and then he realized by the end that this is a system that has no interest in protecting his community and every interest in profiting off of their displacement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot that you said. That's
Sorry, me when I'm monologuing.
but I think like overall, like what you're saying about it's a really delicate balance, right? To, what do you omit, what do you keep within your story, and that's true, like not just of documentaries, but just any story, right? If you add too much unnecessary information, then pretty soon you'll lose that emotional punch that I think you were describing, right? Um, and yeah, and you know what? There was definitely, there was, I mean, to be honest with how I just reacted to the film, right? Like I did kind of just, I didn't want, Aaron to be proven wrong, right? Documentaries tend to be, from what I understand, I mean, a lot of them tend to be quite miserable. So,
I mean, maybe I like documentaries about gentrification and climate injustice and poverty and systemic racism.
all of the important
They're usually
issues.
not happy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think of the other characters, though? Do you like? So I'm guessing you were moved by Aaron's story,
I
right?
was. I didn't like it felt sad to see him at the end be dejected and just kind of reflect on all his efforts and think I did the wrong thing or like, oh, I was used. It's sad, you know?
Did you feel like you understood maybe like his? So this is kind of, well, like my quibble, if you will, with the film is that I didn't feel like I appreciated, or I understood like how he, in a way, I guess, deluded himself. Like the information was before him, and how he became a part of it. That, like, so I mean, in a way, like in terms of like focus, like Aaron is not the protagonist. In a way, well, maybe he is, but maybe Samantha. I mean, there are a lot of different characters within the story, and did you feel like they were like all fully developed?
I guess, yeah, why did Aaron believe that that would work isn't necessarily explained other than maybe just the fact that, like, I think it could just be the fact that, like, he has this job and it's directly related to his community and he's thinking like this is my chance to make like I don't know like I don't want to psychoanalyze him beyond that like that's kind of what I guess I would have assumed because like I guess also just he talks about like there should be examples of people in this community who are like living above the poverty line just like as kind of like hope or as positive examples for people who feel like they're stuck in this which is like it seems like that's kind of something that he was thinking and so like maybe just he thought like as himself like someone who like had a good job and was trying to do something good for the community like I seen it as the right thing to do and I mean it's I don't think that at the end of the day we're even supposed to watch the I mean supposed to but like at the end of the day I didn't watch this and think Aaron messed up like I watched this and kind of thought he was a product of a system that kind of took advantage of him probably tokenized him a little bit, having this white-owned corporation put, you know, a black man to their Liberty Square, like to be the public-facing part of their Liberty Square thing, and have him have to take all the heat. Like again, I just think it's like a way of them to be like, see, like it's your community, like we're, he's
Right.
dealing with, like it seemed like them, like they took advantage of him um, to kind of take the fall for what they were doing. So like I didn't see Aaron as someone who acted in the wrong. I saw him as kind of just like the film making the statement that like within the system things can't be changed. Like it's a system that doesn't have people's interests in mind. So even if you do within that system, your hands are kind of tied. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. The one thing that like I drew a little picture reminder because I wanted to talk about this is they do when they do show or when they introduce the fact that the Section 8 vouchers were being introduced, they show Aaron kind of standing at the back of the community room, and he's really small in the frame. And then there's this huge kind of like background, and you're just thinking like, that's him feeling small in the moment. Like that's him being like, oh, the rug was pulled out from me. I'm trying to do something good here. So that's kind of like that's what I thought.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. I see that. I'm also distracted by what Khalil has sent us. Uh, I mean, what did you think of the cinematography? I mean, just the director, it seems, based on an interview, was looking for, something cinematic in, think a western, an epic.
That's not something that came to mind for me when I watched it. For me, like the what
Same.
struck me right away was about the cinematography was, they had right at the beginning when they introduced Aaron, which is like kind of which clued me into Aaron's kind of this antagonist. At the beginning, I think they have him more as an
With the
antagonist
shades.
character who gets filled out, who gets like more filled out in the end, right? And then you're like, okay, he's a good guy, like he's just being used. But like they have him talk about, oh, Liberty City's my home, Liberty Square's my home, and then as he's saying that, it's like voiceover, and then there's shots of like the destruction of Liberty Square that he is like working alongside. So that I thought was um, some kind of foreshadowing about Aaron. That by the end of the film, when I watched that, I'm like, I wonder if that was fair towards him. That
Hmm.
opening. I thought that like that definitely made me think like, okay, so we're like listening to a hypocrite now. When you see that, or like you're kind of like, yeah, I think it's like you're in on the joke there, but I don't know how like I it kind of threw me off about how Aaron was going to be portrayed.
Right. Yeah. No. No. I definitely agree with that. Um, it did feel much more intimate, right? Like as a story, like a lot of it does take place, with interviews from members of the community, right? And so, I don't know if I thought of a Western at all. But yeah, I mean, it did look very, very beautiful, almost romantic. I mean, even like, interior shots of the classrooms looked pleasant. I almost want to just go there and just confirm that it doesn't look like that, like it just popped that much. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell from the filmmaking, like from the time that even when they're driving around with Samantha in her car, like that, and they kind of show like you can tell you in that moment I was like, oh, there's a cameraman in the back seat of her car, right? So you do get the sense that like the filmmakers spent time in this community. Like and it happens over years, right? So they have a years long relationship with the people in this community. There's love in the way I thought that the camera showcased, like again, like the school, especially like I found this kind of the most in the shots of the kids. Like sometimes you're watching, like there's this one scene that I really remember where someone's like watching something through a fence and it just like focuses on the hand and the fence. And then like for me I was just then thinking about like you're thinking about what's the future of these kids, like, and you reflect on all the things that they've got going against them, and you think all the things that they've got going for them, because they do have a community that cares about them, like a community that's working really hard for them, and then it makes you think about the system that isn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, so you did say that Aaron wasn't, I mean, you feel that he's a good person. Of course, it's not, I won't hold you to that or anything. But what about like, his immediate boss and his boss's boss? I mean, surely, they all, I mean, ultimately have to just sort of kneel before the system. Um,
um
who was the real villain?
but the thing is, it's the mayor watches this and he says to the public, like the mayor, he oversees that this is happening. He says at the beginning, oh, I know all about Liberty Square. It's like, okay, sure. But then it's the Miami government that allowed that took the public housing and let the private um, corporations come in and develop it. And then he says to the people, no one's been displaced. And then we find out that of the hundreds of families that accepted Section 8 vouchers, only five have returned. So everyone knows it's a lie. Aaron stands there and he goes, "Oh my God, they're lying." And you can see him, like, you see him become disillusioned over the course of the film. So, like, I mean, obviously, I just don't think he's a bad person. I think he had good motivations throughout. He didn't make a ton of money and then leave Liberty Square and then profit off of it and then, say peace out. He stayed involved with the community. So, like, that just to me, you can tell that he's a complex character because he's acting in a way that, like, from someone sitting at home watching it, they know that what he wants to happen is, like, it's not going to work out in his favor and it's going to impact. But we have the, like, advantage of being the ones watching the finished documentary, and you can tell that he loves his community because the filmmakers don't antagonize him. They show that he loves, or they don't antagonize him throughout the whole thing. They treat him completely. I mean, I do think at the beginning there you kind of hear the, "Oh, I love Liberty Square," and then they're bulldozing the house, and you're like, "Uh-oh, he's not going to be a good guy." But I do think that the film treats him as a nuanced character and, like, shows that he does love his community. So, like, I don't know, there's layers of detachment from the other people where they don't have to deal with it the same way he does. So it's, like, I guess tough to say, well, they're evil because it's not like they know the people, but they're part of the system. Like, it's a tough question. Where is the, like, bad person threshold? Isn't everyone a pawn of the system? But, like, the system has, like, people who keep it moving, and, like, I don't know. I don't know. These aren't questions that I'm equipped to answer. What do you think? You're on the hot seat now. You answer that question.
Well, I mean, I definitely felt like, everybody, could sort of, um, almost absolve themselves off responsibility, at the end. And in fact, that's what they kind of do. They're just like, okay, our political ploy, maybe it didn't work out exactly the way we thought it did. Let's just, claim that nobody was displaced. I mean, Ben Carson enters the picture briefly, Um, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I do think that at the beginning, though, their plan did not really. I mean, it didn't stem from the community. Um, Aaron was sort of brought in to execute a plan that effectively involved. I mean, it's that there isn't really a direct connection between, like, the economic development that they proposed and addressing the problems that the community faces, right? Like, and so right from the beginning, right, like, I think that the point was more that it was, I mean, the plan was a disease to begin with, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess, like, I do. I mean, that there is something to be said that, like, I mean, if your plan is, you know, like that, you're setting yourself up for failure if you did want to improve the lives of the residents. So I just think the plan was rotten. But of course,
Yeah.
that sounds too neat as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, we've got some intel coming in here.
oh my God, Khalil,
So
like, what am I supposed to do with this?
tell us the stuff beforehand, man. So to answer my own questions earlier about why um, the developer, the head of that development corporation, stopped being interviewed. Like I said, oh, why is he only interviewed at the beginning? Did the filmmakers choose to admit something? Did they just refuse to like make contact? It's like, no, they didn't want this documentary to come out, so that's why they're not in it.
Thank you,
Further, as
Khalil.
we're finding out, the developers were very, very much against the release of this film, and they went so far as to kind of try to bully a lot of the people who were in the film out of wanting to take part in the whole project because they didn't want their shiftiness and the deception that was happening to be made public, and that's what Razing Liberty Square did. So good for everyone who, like, braved it out and was in the documentary and stood up for themselves, and then to anyone who was scared out of it, I'm so sorry that that happened, but it doesn't look like that happened. It looks like everyone kind of held their ground. So that's interesting. Because, yeah, the developers being the villains, I'm like, that honestly fits with me.
I mean, okay,
I'm
but
like,
that's too easy. I mean, I know that's
it's
Khalil's
easy, but
perspective, right? Like, but that is, it's I'm I think that they're like what exactly they did wrong is what needs to be addressed, and who actually is in power. When we say the developers, right?
that's true. Well, something that I thought was kind of interesting is Aaron says it's really a shame that we couldn't have come up with something more creative to solve this problem without displacing people. Um, which kind of makes me wonder, are there examples of public housing projects like kind of having a facelift but not destroying the integrity of like the community there? And like I don't know. That's not like I don't have the answer to that. Is it like how do you deal with when they did have people of different like economic standings there? Like it sounds kind of like the people who were paying more saw the people who had lived in Liberty Square beforehand as like a nuisance, and then those people all just felt like they were being watched all the time, and that if they mess up, now you know, they're under this private ownership that has a lot of power over their living situation, and that's scary. And so how, even in the most ideal case for the people who stayed, how is that the best situation? And then again, another thing that I thought was really interesting that the film only touched on briefly, but I thought a lot about is when they talked about how when Liberty Square got, you know, when everyone got displaced and there's people who were sent way up north and people who were sent way up south, how that dispersed the community's voting power. How like
Mm.
there goes a lot of the black voting power in Miami, and that's like, oh whoa, there it's like even more big picture where you're like, you know, at the end of the day, I guess you can sit here and think like, was that the developer's goal? And it's it'd be tough to sit here and think yes, that's definitely the developer's goal, but it's something that happened because of that. Like it's again a systemic issue and it's a systemic strategy and it's an impact of gentrification that's not a secret, right? It's not a secret that when black communities are split apart, there goes their voting power, but it's not something that's talked about a lot. And so like they mentioned it kind of briefly in the film and then they moved on because like there was other kind of bigger topics again that the documentary was talking about. And that would have been kind of another tangent in a documentary that already has so much going on for it. But I thought that was so like to talk about like the cultural heritage and how Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali and all these like really important figures of the civil rights movement were all there, and now it's like where what's happening to all this history. But then again, I think with the documentary, I'm monologuing again, so I'll like have it
All
off in a
good. It,
second here.
it it saves me a lot of trouble.
But what I thought was, again, to talk like there's like a nice balance I think in this film of like addressing issues that are important issues and not giving in to this media trope and this media tactic of portraying like black people or impoverished people as like just like victims of like just these victims of poverty, because if the media always treats people as victims of poverty, then their poverty is just something that like everyone's desensitized to, so like they do show moments of joy in the film that I think is important. Like again, like we have to see um like minorities and like especially ones that have all this systemic injustice against them. Like it's important that we see the triumphs of the black community too, because we don't just want like all this kind of systemic violence that happens against them to be how everyone thinks of them. So to see them graduate in the hotel where all these figures, like I thought that was really powerful and moving, and like it just shows that like the work that these people were doing is not all for nothing. They have all these things coming up against them, but there's people who are making change in the community, and like and good for them. Like like it's the triumph of, and not just I mean obviously Samantha's done so much, but just the triumph of all the other people that it takes a village, like they say, all the people that are involved in raising the children of the community, and the children are the future. Like, I thought that was an important thing again. Like, I thought it was like a very human documentary. They handled depictions of people with care, I thought, and I really liked that.
Ultimately, like, I don't think the community needed, like, the community itself needed any changing to their housing, right? I mean, in terms of improvements, you know, uh, yeah, I mean, maybe, I mean, of course, the building, maybe could have been renovated, but ultimately, like, the main issues that the community was faced was, I think, maybe poverty, and that's not, the new housing project didn't really address those issues. In fact, it seemed to be that those issues were being addressed. I mean, the issues that were being addressed were other people's issues, right? And then this premium land that's not going to be flooded, because of climate change. Yeah, it just becomes premium real estate that needs to be developed. Uh, or maybe I shouldn't say needs to be. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, did you have any? I mean, we haven't really spoken about the climate change aspect. Any thoughts? Or maybe that's an unfair thing to just spring on you. Um, yeah. What was the name of the climate change activist in the film? I know you've written all of these things down.
Yes, it was Valencia. I didn't catch her last name. Valencia.
What did you think
Valencia
of?
Gunder.
What do you think of? I mean, her approach, her story within the context of the film. Um, I'm she's not a major character, but not exactly minor either.
Hmm. Um, I mean, I'm thinking here. I think like she's you again. Like, we see kind of the history of Liberty Square, and it's just like built on this history of segregation, and they haven't even totally torn down the wall. Like, the wall that segregated the black community and the white community in the 60s is like still there. It's not as tall, but it's there, right? So you're seeing like this, the racial history of why these people were like pushed inland and like given the portion that no one else wanted. Everyone wants to live on the beach, and so they, shove like they take like the people who built, Miami, who came up from the Caribbean and built Miami, and they shove them inland and segregate them. And then once, the climate crisis makes their lovely beachfront less inhabitable, they're like, okay, screw you guys, So, and which she doesn't like explicitly say, obviously, because you can't say that on a panel to discuss climate change, but um, like, she points out how racial justice and climate justice are connected, and I don't think I otherwise would have watched this film and given climate justice much thought, or like thought about the relationship between gentrification. And they talk about how many climate refugees are coming in, and how they're now being displaced, and how like these crazy numbers of what we're going to see in the future. um, and it then the documentary does raise these really important questions of what are we going to do when there's less space, when there's less real estate, and when hurricanes and stuff would just become worse as a result of the climate crisis. We already don't have low income housing. Like, we already don't have housing for so many people, like whether they've been here for ages or whether they're recent climate refugees, so like it's just going to become all the rich people who used to live at the beach will just now live inland safely, and then everyone else is wherever, because who's looking out for them, right? Like it's up to them, and they're against this giant system that again doesn't care.
Yeah, yeah. That's really disheartening. Uh, uh yeah. I mean, with this quote, and her last name is Gunder. Is that right?
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, who knows Miami's long history of disenfranchisement and divestment? There was a hidden motive then, and there's a hidden motive now. So yeah, I mean I mean their perspective seems to be that uh, the developers know exactly what they're doing, right? Everybody knows exactly
Yeah.
what they're doing, but ultimately to protect their own, which is those in power, to perpetuate the system in which they benefit. Um, they, they have to, uh, contribute to the gentrification and the destruction of neighborhoods. What I found interesting, and this is, I mean, on a much lighter note, is the just the little things, washing your clothes together with your neighborhood, just dragging some chairs and just sitting outside on the curb. There's just none of that now. And it really, just seeing how I mean, at the start of the film, how the neighborhood gets together. I mean, I don't see enough of that, in most major cities, right? And I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, do you know your neighbors, for instance?
I have not met like any of my neighbors. Uh, yeah, you see that a lot, and like again, the film pays attention to how much this community, like the history of the community, and how much they care about each other. But what I also like is that they put the narrative like in the hands of the community. Like it's not the film telling you. Well, I mean, it's the film, but like it's not like some filmmaker voiceover or like this talking head of like an expert who doesn't live in the community. Like it's the people in the community themselves that they're aware of what's happening, right? Like they're so aware of what's happening around them, and it's nice that they're the voices that are sharing it. Like the when the captions come in, it's really just like kind of the bare bones, like what you need to know for the next portion makes sense, or like there are, statistics that are impactful, but they never say, here's why gentrification is, or like, they, they, they respect that the people in the community like know what's going on and they're empowering them, and you don't feel like this is a film that came in and just said like, okay, here's the story as we've seen it. I don't know, like they're like, here's this community and here are their voices, and I liked that a lot. And I
Yeah.
think it added to the romance of the community is to have it be like them that are saying like, yeah, and we know what's going on here.
Um. So how do you think Aaron feels maybe about his initial depiction? Because I mean, I think that you brought it up. You immediately just you're just clued into the fact that, this is the entrance of the villain, at least in the beginning. And then, again, as you pointed out, he becomes more human, if you will. Um, yeah, I mean, what do you think of the portrayal of Aaron?
Um,
Uh,
I think I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to be Aaron and to be involved in the
just
process. Like like he faced backlash in his
yeah.
community. So like you do wonder like, are people going to watch this film and is he going to face more backlash, or are people going to understand him? And I do think that like because of the way that he is portrayed throughout the film, that I do think that people are going to understand him better, or they're going to see how, like at the end he says, I knew that I was a political hire, but I just thought I'd be able to change the system, and I found out that like it's either I leave now or the system changes me. And I just thought like that was just really really telling, and like that kind of showed me like that's what the film, I think, wanted us to see from Aaron. Like they wanted us to see this.
Madeline? Yeah. What
They
what
died.
just happened?
My headphones died. So, anyways,
Wow, like your screen went black. You just vanished. Okay.
Very weird. But like I think that it's easy to say that every single, like it's easy to see the corporation and blame every single person in the corporation, or to think like, is this like, is the corporation only unfeeling white people? And then it's like easy to go, oh, like evil corporation. And we're still seeing how the corporation is bad, but we're seeing how like it's not just this like easily identifiable enemy. Like they got someone again from the community and used him as a scapegoat. And now like this is like, how does, first of all, how does that feel? And obviously just terribly, like what does that mean for the community to have someone that like that they care about be a part of this project, and then for them to, and then a lot of people did turn on him. And you could like, it's like, on one hand, of course you understand their anger, right? But on the other hand, you're watching Aaron now have to like have all these people kind of just really mad at him for something that he went into thinking this is going to benefit my community. So
Right,
like
but
I think it would have hopefully, like Aaron is like cool with that. Like I don't know what like. Do would the people who like felt wronged by Aaron watch this and have a different opinion? Like they already know him, like outside. So it's interesting. I really don't know what it would be like to be him and like have this film be made about you. It's really it's really interesting, and maybe a little bit of like a distraction from what the film was about. But it's like it's not that often I find that you find a documentary with such a compelling like character study within like within just a film that's dealing with so many things.
right, right. But I do, in a way, feel like that character study might be like the core of the film. I don't know. I just keep coming back to it, and I do think that, I mean, his initial reasons are just, they're it's like somebody's economic thinking is simplified into a few, bite-sized quotes, right? And so then he becomes like an easy kind of, oh, this is the villain. And I do think that maybe, you know, I mean, of course, you might run into some pacing issues. But I do think that there needed to be something I maybe elaborated with, just how does that happen? I think that is, just how you get roped into something like that is, like central to the film. I don't know if you agree or not. Also, do I look very dark? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I want to switch on the light. Okay, I'm just gonna pull down the blinds. Give me a second.
All right.
I think this is better.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyways,
Uh,
but shall we we've spent a lot of time on Aaron. I feel like let's talk about some of the kind of other characters.
Samantha.
Yeah, Samantha, who like when she kind of at the end like she has to deal with the frustration of she's promised, loosely promised, never given a contract. She's promised a school, and then that just keeps being ripped away from her. And then you're watching her, and she's saying, "Yeah, we feed everyone 3 meals a day. Sometimes the kids are still hungry, so she pays out of pocket. Like she's working so hard for these kids, and she's so capable. She's writing grants and stuff, but again, you see how like the city just doesn't want to give her the time of day kind of, or promise her a building. Like what, I don't know. That what I found was a really powerful part, was just kind of watching her. Like I wouldn't even call it a breakdown, because she's still like decently composed, but like just kind of watching her feel the weight of that, and like the kind of hopelessness, even though she does, like, again, insane. She picks herself up from it and finds a plot of land and is like, I'm still gonna make this happen. But like I thought that was like a really powerful part.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Like, I mean, I don't. Did she say she was paying for everything? Not everything out of
Not
pocket, but
everything.
the meals.
No, she mentioned at one point, it's in my notes somewhere. She
Okay.
mentioned that the children there receive 3 meals a day, and sometimes it's not enough. like they're dealing with government funding and grants and
Right.
stuff, right? And
Yeah.
like ever like I don't know, it shouldn't surprise people that teachers are underfunded and unappreciated for all the work they do. And like I feel like it's kind of common knowledge at this point that a lot of school supplies and stuff are bought out of the pockets of teachers. But here is like she's like making sure that like she's putting in like 1000% of her like effort into taking care of these kids and just not receiving the time of the day at all from the government. And again, it's
Yeah.
like how is this like, they're rebuilding. Oh, and then, they took the land that she wanted for her school and then they built a vet clinic on
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is this
It's
like
just about to say.
infuriating. You're like, oh, like these are like human children. Like these are like real kids. And again, like a lot of them are like, as the film says, at-risk youth. Like they're people in this community that's been underfunded forever and just facing discrimination and racism and stuff. And then you have the chance to build them a school and put them in the hands of a community that cares about them and in the hands of someone who loves them and like wants to move heaven and earth for them. And then instead they build a $27 million vet clinic. Like it's infuriating, And when you're watching them painting the side of the building for a minute, you're like, oh, what are they doing here? And you're kind of thinking like, are they doing like, oh look, like there's someone's doing something to benefit this community when you see the
Right.
people painting it. And then they like pull the rug out and they're like, this is a veterinary clinic. Like that's a cat that they're painting. It's not fun colors on the building of a school or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just to rub salt on the wound, they showcase it to the community. This is what you will not use. uh, yeah. Yeah. That's again tough. There is this notion, as Khalil has brought up just now. What do you think of the claim that land is the primary character in the doc? And now, quote, land was used as a tool of discrimination, land that is now disappearing because the sea is rising. I think that's a quote from the director. Or, not sure, actually.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been asking you a lot of questions. Fair enough.
I
Uh,
don't answer them. I love to talk, but let's hear some more from you.
yeah, I think, okay, so it is from the director. Um, I don't know if Land is the primary character in the doc. I mean, yes, like, the seawater rising is, let's say the call to action, for everybody, Now there's a problem, and hence, we need to find new land. But, it's yeah, it's not like from a stylistic perspective, I didn't really get the sense that I was being shown land itself that and that dominated the frame. I do feel like this is like a really like at its heart, it's it's about the members of the community. So I think that it's a film that is about I mean the primary character, if you will, would be the community itself, or maybe an individual member of the community, and that that I'm thinking of Aaron, but Samantha too, and then
Or the
Valencia.
mother. Sam is the mother
Oh,
too.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
so, her and her family are so important. We haven't talked about them a lot, but I do think that they're also kind of the emotional core of the film. So I would have a hard time, I think, saying that the land is so important and the land is what it's what drives the film. But like I do feel like the characters are the core. The families and are like the emotional core of the film to me. Like you worry about her son and you kind of watch him like feel like he's got all these responsibilities to help his mom and he's in school and there's a lot of like you want him to stay out of trouble. Like the documentary kind of keeps hinting at like oh, there's all this, like, he's a young kid, and if we're not like if we're not funding schools and stuff, like, how is he supposed to get on this path where he's going to find economic development? Like, how is he not just going to fall prey to this system of incarceration that's super prevalent through this community, which is just like, again, like, it kind of haunts the documentary, even though it's less explicitly like one of the primary themes, right? So, like, caring about the future of the kids is such, like, I think a heavy, like, it's what, like, adds on to the stakes of the film. And then there you kind of think about, there I think the land comes in to question too, is when we think about the kids' future, how can we not think about the climate crisis and how that's going to impact them, especially, how long are they going to get to live in the above water portion of Miami? What are they going to do when it just, like, what are they going to do when this, like, when the buildings become decrepit too, because there's already mold? Like, there's so many questions that are raised. But yeah, I don't know.
You know, again, this might be a little bit off topic, but I'm trying to think of a documentary that I did see. I think it was it last year? It was on Honest Ed's. Um, you know, um, uh, there used to be quite affordable housing in that region of Bloor and Bathurst, here in Toronto. And yeah, I saw a doc. You didn't happen to see that, would you?
No, Honest Ed's was a little bit before I came to Toronto. It was already gone, so I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't know too much.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's had a good reputation for a business, you know. Um, but of course, I wasn't really around either. No, I wasn't around at all when it shut down. But yeah, I mean, like, this is. I mean, my point was more like it's. They're. I mean, we're all going to be affected by this. You know. Yeah, yeah. No, it's heavy stuff. Um, I were you particularly moved by, like, the children in the film?
Yes, I was. Like, I said that in a weird tone, but it's like, yes, I'm
Not
also
at
just
all.
a sucker for kids. Like, I love kids and I love babies, so I feel like I'll probably never not watch a documentary and have them move me. But what did you like? It almost sounds like you think no, so that's kind of why I was like, well, yeah, of course. And I do think they're important to the film, regardless of whether or not I love them more because they're
No,
kids. And
I'm not criticizing the documentary for once. I I wouldn't say that I was particularly moved by it, so I just thought I might mention it. But by the children in the documentary, because there are just so many things that are happening, so you're not really, it's not like you're focused on, or at least I wasn't really focused on the children. But then again, like, there was sufficient emphasis, if you will. The kid is basically slowly, like, one of the kids is just slowly, coaxed into an interview, right? Where his mother is asking him the questions, right? So there are certainly moments like that, but yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, it's just how I personally reacted to it.
yeah, well, there's never, like you said, the kids don't really directly address the camera, whether it's because they're too young or they're just not given, speaking roles in the documentary. And from what we're hearing about all the developers really trying to put a kibosh on the documentary, I'm like, it's probably a little responsible. It's probably responsible of the filmmakers that they weren't, like, coaxing all these young kids into talking. They're, but it, like, I don't know. It makes you think again of, like, the fact that it's the community that's trying to protect these kids, and in a way, is the film also trying to protect them, or do they just not have a speaking role, and then that takes away from the emotional connection to them? I don't know, but, like, I didn't think, I don't know. I did feel the stakes for the kids. Like, I did find that was well done. And I just found that, like, as far as like the cinematography of the documentary goes, that there was lots of kind of just lingering shots on them and like glimpses into the world. Like I do think that they were handled with care.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't really have any criticism there or anything to contribute. Uh, but yeah, yeah. I mean, do you have any other thoughts on the film?
I really liked it. I don't know. I liked that. I did like. Wanted to mention this. I liked the kind of older women that were talking about the kind of the history of Razing Liberty Square. There was a couple older women and then a group of older men that were all kind of going back and forth about the history, which I really liked. I liked that they pulled in some archival footage. I thought that was great. It was interesting to hear about the 1980 riots, and again, just how like the destruction of the infrastructure was so important. Like I do think that that calls back to the theme of land in the film, and like there's so much about land but also so much about infrastructure. And so just thinking about how like how they're always up against something, you know, like with the infrastructure that's like not designed to care for these like impoverished black communities. Like they're always just kind of up against this behemoth, and the film like shows the culture that was still happening amidst it all. They show the women who speak kind of so affectionately of the time and are such proponents for the history of the community, which I thought was just really interesting, and another kind of human element of the film that reminds you of the, you know, the cultural and communal ties that they have with Liberty Square and with that land specifically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I mentioned before, you know, I mean, I certainly I would never dream of talking to my neighbors. Uh, have you ever like really known your neighbors?
Um, when I lived in Oakville,
Uh,
I did, which wasn't the city. Like I knew my, but then that like when I was a kid, you know, when I was a little kid, I'd like run into their yard, but you know, now I don't.
oh yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, no, it's crazy. It's yeah, it's interesting, you know, like what even if let's say, you know, the entire community had stayed within those new buildings, do you think that you know, community would have been preserved?
Um, I think that yes, like I do. I do think that if this community was like properly supported and given good housing, that it would flourish, because I kind of think that that's one of the major points is that we're not seeing this misguided community that doesn't know what's best for, like that's a trope that the film does a great job of avoiding. Like that's a trope that's in the media, you know, like the that kind of promotes the age old. Like I'm taking a lot of courses on communications right now. It's like you know, there's this narrative in the media that like there's rich white people who know what to do, and then all the other racialized poor minority communities that don't, and that they're just pinned up again. And the film doesn't do that, because the film is like, no, like these people know what's best for them. They have this healthy community. It's There's a system around it that's failing them. Like I do think that if they had good infrastructure, that they would have just like a thriving community. Like I
I mean,
believe
no, no, that's not what I meant. I meant like with the infrastructure that was given to them, you
with the
know,
infrastructure that was given to the
without the
they were
displacement.
set up for failure with that. Like
Right.
the film doesn't show it, but they mentioned rats and cockroaches and stuff. And again, like I think that there's a reason that that was omitted. Like I don't think we need to like I don't like I feel like it would be kind of embarrassing to have a documentary crew come in and show the world that there's roaches and rats in your house. And I like it's not our fault that we have this house with holes in it, you know? Like we didn't put them there. It's like I get it. Like I get that um like they didn't show that every, you know, the nitty-gritty of every single issue with the infrastructure. They definitely needed better housing, I think. But like would they have been better off left to themselves even with the kind of shitty infrastructure? Like, I think yes, probably. Like again, now they're dispersed. The community, bond and a history is kind of, everyone's separated from it now. And then again, like the black voting power in that district has now been dispersed and like, just
Yeah.
replaced with people who are going to vote for the best interests of people who will happily move into, you know, a gentrified neighborhood. Like, which I don't know, maybe that's like hypocritical because Toronto is undergoing insane gentrification and I still live here. But like, I don't know.
I'm sure that it's be very difficult if you had an apartment that was cheaper to move into to not move into it, right? Um,
Obviously.
yeah. Uh, yeah. Okay. I'm willing to just call it here. You know, how do we sign off? You did our intro.
So let's remind the people who we are.
Okay.
This is Celluloid Chatroom.
I'm Sahan.
I'm Madeleine.
All right,
And
and yeah, please be sure to like and subscribe. We 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 post every week. Yeah. Thanks for watching or
yeah, this
listening.
is episode 1. Thank you for you tune out any growing pains that you heard during our first episode. As far as you're concerned, this was perfect.
Yeah, yeah, this was perfect. All right, yeah. I'm willing to call it here.